What if believing that your brain determines your behavior actually makes you behave worse? Today, we're exploring a fascinating and slightly unsettling idea that neuroscience, while powerful, can change how we think about responsibility and even how we act. Chapter 14 examines how modern neuroscience is reshaping our understanding of human responsibility, agency, and moral behavior. At the center of the chapter is attention. On one hand, neuroscience helps us understand behavior more deeply. On the other, it risks undermining our belief in free will and accountability. The chapter develops this through four major themes. 1. Biological explanations are a double-edged sword. They reduce blame, but also reduce belief in change. 2. Beliefs about free will influence behavior. If people think they lack control, they may act less morally. 3. Brain damage can disrupt moral functioning, especially in areas tied to emotional and social reasoning. 4. Some individuals resist evil anyway, suggesting that character and values still matter deeply. The conclusion points toward a compatibilist view. Yes, biology matters, but individuals still act from their values and remain responsible. Let's break down the core claims. Claim 1. Neuroscience reduces blame but increases pessimism. When behavior is explained biologically, people tend to judge offenders as less morally responsible, but also as less capable of change. This is called the double-edged sword effect. Claim 2. Neuromania increases persuasion. The chapter argues that people are overly impressed by brain-based explanations, even when they add little value. In other words, because the brain did it sounds more scientific, even when it's circular or unnecessary. Claim 3. Weakening belief in free will changes behavior. Research suggests that when belief in free will is reduced, cheating increases, aggression increases, conformity increases. 2 mechanisms are proposed. 1. Reduced self-control. I can't override my impulses anyway. 2. Moral licensing. It's not really my fault. Claim 4. The brain plays a role in moral functioning. Damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex leads to poor moral judgment, impulsivity, loss of emotional integration in decision-making. Classic cases like Phineas Gage show this clearly. These individuals can still reason logically, but fail to apply that reasoning in moral contexts. Claim 5. Moral courage still exists. Despite biological and situational pressures, some individuals resist evil. Holocaust rescuers, for example, show principled independence and habitual pro-social behavior. Their moral actions are often automatic rather than deliberative. Now let's critically evaluate the chapter. Limitation 1. Overgeneralization of neuroscience effects. The chapter may overstate how much neuroscience changes behavior. Not everyone exposed to deterministic ideas becomes less moral. Individual differences such as values, identity, and training matter. Limitation 2. Causation versus priming effects. Many studies cited rely on short-term experimental primes. Do these reflect real-world, long-term belief systems or temporary lab effects? Limitation 3. Underdeveloped model of agency. The chapter supports compatibilism, but it doesn't fully explain how agency operates within constraints. It risks sounding like you're determined but still responsible. That tension needs more clarity. Limitation 4. Limited integration with psychotherapy. From a clinical perspective, if beliefs about agency influence behavior, then interventions like CBT and REBT become crucial. But the chapter doesn't fully explore this applied implication. Limitation 5. Moral heroism may be idealized. The portrayal of rescuers emphasizes stable traits, may underplay situational and developmental factors. In reality, moral courage is likely trainable, not just dispositional. Now let's move into application. Question 1. The double-edged sword. If biological explanations reduce blame but also reduce hope for change, which is more dangerous in society? Why? Question 2. Belief to behavior. If weakening belief in free will increases unethical behavior, should we be cautious about how we teach neuroscience? Where is the ethical line? Question 3. Clinical implications. How should a therapist respond to a client who says, I can't help it? My brain made me do it. Should we validate, challenge, reframe? Question 4. Moral responsibility. Are individuals still responsible if their behavior is strongly influenced by brain function? What does responsibility even mean in this context? Question 5. Building moral courage. Based on the chapter, Can Moral Courage Be Trained? If so, how? Question 6. Integration with course themes. How does this chapter connect to situational influence, identity, moral decision making? Does it strengthen or weaken your belief in personal responsibility? The central question of this chapter is not just scientific, it's personal. Are you the product of your brain or the author of your actions? The most compelling answer may be both. And what you believe about that may shape who you become.